Wingman Joker, thank you for listening to this channel and please support the channel. Please subscribe. Chapter 05, Poison. Weighing his options, Adrian decided to not risk leaving school looking like a monster, as that would raise too many questions. He quickly left the classroom he was in and headed through the empty hallways toward the gym, where there was a shower room for those guys doing night training. It seemed, other than the adultering couple from earlier, the third experimental magical school, which had just acquired a new legend about a monster who hides in its cabinets, was empty. Adrian quickly left the main building and found his way into the gym, picking a few locks in the process. For someone like him who had the expertise of many worlds, such a feat was trivial. Finding the showers, he quickly entered, threw away his filthy clothes in a plastic bag, and then began to wash the black waste of his body, watching the filthy black water drain on the ceramic floor below him. Wait, he stopped what he was doing, ignoring the water that dripped over his head. He knelt down and examined the floor, where the black traces left by the black tar that fell from his body were visible. Among them, he noticed something that only someone like him could pay attention to. A residue of a red crystalline substance. It was as fine as powdered sugar. He swapped some with his finger and smelled it. Abyssal python grass. He frowned as a strange string of thoughts began to overcome his mind. As one of his soul fragments was an expert in poisons, he knew what this was. It was a form of poison that had the effect of weakening the body and disabling magic flow. The thing was totally untraceable and very tricky to detect if you never heard about it beforehand. As far as he knew, he only encountered this grass in 2 hellish worlds, as it needed very extreme conditions to grow. He didn't expect it to be found in his original world. So it was deliberate, he told himself with a cold voice. His losing of the power to use magic was not only because of his weakened soul, it seemed. Someone must have poisoned him. If it were not for the restructuring that expelled all foreign substances from his body, it would have taken him a few months to find out and get rid of those toxins. Thankfully, now after the restructuring he had done, most of them should have been expelled, as they mostly store under the skin. Still, he would just need to take some antidote later just in case. The question was, when was it done? Abyssal python grass had to be given in 3 separate dosages for it to work. Those guys might have had a lot of time to do it when he was hospitalized. If he ever found out who did it, he was going to rip their throats and boil their eyes. He stopped and held his head. Once again his mind was full of useless thoughts of him committing heinous crimes. It took him a few minutes to fully regain control over his body as his head cooled down. This was troublesome. His soul fragments, although combined again, were far from perfectly merging. He needed to find a place to relax quickly. Finishing the shower, Adrian grabbed a random towel, then walked out and glanced at his reflection in the grand mirror on the wall of the gym. He couldn't help but look at his dark red hair, amber eyes, and the way his body flowed. He was too fucking handsome. All his soul fragments agreed to that. The only problem was that his body was very slim and short, unlike his bodies in the different worlds where he was at the very least a foot taller. This must have been the effect of that poison that restricted growth. It must have been administered to him right after that accident. Damn it, curing this would take some time. Sighing, he hurried to leave and discovered he had some really big problem that he overlooked in his hurry. He was completely naked, and he had nothing to wear except for some really slimy and filthy school uniform that he would rather die than wear ever again. Still, after regaining his sense of smell, he finally realized that his decision to take a shower was the right one. What should he do? Pondering his options, he remembered that the sports clubs who practiced here had some lockers to keep their clothes, so he quickly headed to find those, unlocking them with a flip of his finger and then choosing a suitable tracksuit to wear. Although some of his soul fragments expressed reluctance at the mere idea of wearing someone else's clothes, he had no other choice. So after searching for 10 minutes, he could only take the tracksuit of a female student due to his body stature. Hopefully, she wouldn't mind. Fixing himself up, he paused. His mind was buzzing with one idea: he had to hide his track. Slowly, all his other thoughts began to align with that. His enemies must not know what happened here. So after taking a few minutes to clean things up in the gym, he quickly hurried toward the school's principal's room. Why? Simple. The school had recently installed some magical security cameras after some vandalism accident. And the recording crystal was locked in the principal's office. He needed to go to the administrative building fast before someone decided to check about the monster. Sadly, by the time he got there, the corridors were no longer empty. 2 lousy guards were standing in the corridor right next to the principal's office door. Damn it, why is the key not working? Oh, now I remember. The new principal asked the old black to change the lock 3 weeks ago after someone broke into the office. Damn it, that idiot didn't replace the spare key. Come on, we can check the recording in the morning, it will not be too late to call the monster hunters by then. One guard said as he yawned. I am sure those kids were just on some drugs. How can a monster sneak into this school that is literally in the middle of the city? Fine, the first guard said as his friend dragged him away. Adrian simply stuck to a wall behind a nearby cabinet and then waited for a whole 10 minutes until they left without noticing him as he was using a martial arts technique to hide his breath. Those things were not exactly magic as that world had none. In the other world, he used internal energy, but here he had to use mana which was much more powerful and easier to implement as he made it flow through his body in a specific pattern. Making sure they were no longer nearby, he quickly used a pair of paper clips to unlock the door and then entered the principal's office. Carefully, making sure not to step on the trap magical circle right next to the door. He could easily notice it with his extreme mana sensitivity. He quickly found the magical recording crystal which he swiftly took, then broke by throwing it to the ground making it look like an accident. Finishing with this, he swiftly turned to leave then paused and turned back as he remembered something. He went to a side cabinet, broke its lock with a pen he grabbed from the desk, and then began to search through the files in it until he found a large folder with his name on it. He was sure he would find something regarding himself here, as he was a VIP of sorts. Opening it, he found that it was completely empty. Strange, from the creases on it, it was clear that it contained a lot of things before. Adrian put it back as he pondered on many things. Someone was definitely collecting information about him, and it was most likely his father. But someone else must have gotten access to these lately. This would explain the extra security in school in the last few days. With that thought, Adrian decided that couldn't stay here much longer. He quickly turned around and left the principal's office then, making sure to remain unseen, he sneaked out of school. Where to go now? He asked himself while walking down the streets. His memories slowly rearranged. Yes, he was staying in the house of his foster father, who was in fact one of the trusted agents working for his real father. He should have gone to sleep there tonight, but still, he needed to get something first. Adrian slowly began to walk along the familiar yet strange streets, heading to a nearby herb store that sold traditional medicine. In this world, magical treatments were the norm, and everything else was considered traditional. Welcome, can I help you, Adrian? A familiar pretty face welcomed him. It was his class monitor, Sophie, one of the 3 prettiest girls in his school. Not like he cared. Before the return he did, but not anymore. Maybe a little. She was not bad, about 87/100ths. What about her 3 sizes? Too flat. That's a no-no. Not really, but... Adrian. Sorry, just got a little distracted. Adrian said, ignoring some rogue thoughts that began to flood his mind. Do you work here? Adrian asked. He did remember hearing something about her father working in some shady medical business. Yes, the shop is my father's. What are? Never mind, he interrupted. His mind was too chaotic to hold a conversation at the moment. I want ghost tree root, 3 barren flower petals, and some mana-infused water. Make sure the water is freshly made, he said, starting his demands directly. Those things were pretty cheap so the money he had got should be sufficient. Wait a moment, Sophie said in a professional tone as she hurried to collect the materials. So it was constipation after all, she told herself in a low voice. The things he requested, except for the mana water, worked for severe intestine problems. 2 silvers, she said as she placed a paper bag containing the materials 3 minutes later. She tried hard not to look him straight in the face up close. This guy was just too handsome to be human. Too bad he was a little dull, and a little short. He was almost her height and she liked taller guys. That's what she told herself after all. Adrian quickly fetched 2 of the 3 silver coins he got in his pocket and gave them to her, then grabbing the paper bag, he left in a hurry. Wait, seeing him go, Sophie wanted to stop him. But it was too late as he had already left. Wasn't that tracksuit he was wearing hers? She wondered. No, it must have been her imagination. Adrian had no idea about that. His mind was occupied by the herbs he bought. They were meant to completely remove any residues of the abyssal python grass poison from his body. Although most of it had been expelled, he really didn't want to risk it. Slowly, as he thought of what he needed to do next, he headed to the small family house where he lived. He made a couple of wrong turns but he was able to get there in the end.